Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Did you ever have that talk with your parents, maybe when you were a teenager, and maybe it was one of those one-way transmissions where they're transmitting and you're in receive mode, right? A lot of teenagers have it, where basically your mom or your dad is telling you that your priorities are all screwed up. You need to pull your head out of your fourth point of contact, have a look around, see how the world really is, and get your stuff squared away because your priorities are skewed. Most teenagers have had that talk in one form or another, because as teenagers, we're really self-centered, focused, and we're not really seeing the big picture, right? And so we need to kind of have a reality check from our parents. And hopefully, if you needed that, you got that. Unfortunately, I think either that talk never happened with many Americans or it didn't take. Because as Americans, we are really like a bunch of spoiled teenagers. And our priorities are all out of whack. The things that we think are important are not, as a people. And it's going to come up and it's going to bite us. So here I am. I'm your dad telling you your priorities are all out of whack and you need to get them lined up correctly or it's going to bite you, right? And let's just think of a couple examples. Y2K. Many of you now don't even remember Y2K. I get that. But Y2K, and work with me here. Don't go off on tangents, on comments. Oh, Y2K. But it's just an example that we're using along the way. The basic theory was because of a date problem with computers, all the computers were going to shut down on New Year's of 2000, and because of that, the infrastructure was going to fail, and it may never come back, and blah 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 blah. End of the world as we know it, right? And so people were running around. It was a great time to sell preparedness supplies. But one thing everybody was buying and talking about, and all the internet forums were abuzz with it, was toilet paper. Toilet paper. And people were buying it, by the cases, by the truckload, filling their attic with toilet paper. And there was a lot of talk about, oh, don't just stick it in your attic, mice will get it, dun, dun, dun. And it's like, really? Really? With your pampered, powdered behind, this is what you're thinking about is toilet paper when the world is fixing to crash down around you? You're thinking about what you're going to wipe your butt with? Well, yeah, that's important. Your priorities are out of whack. Do you know people have existed on this earth for millennia without toilet paper? I know, right? Oh my, yeah. There's still people today that don't use it. Again, another tangent, right? But the thing is, people were thinking about toilet paper because in their world, that's what they thought was important. And really, they weren't thinking outside of that into what could really happen and what real priorities had to be, like food, water, medical. Now, some people were, right, granted. But, people weren't. And people today still aren't. One of the kicks I get on, I know it kind of bores you sometimes, and I'll try and lay off of it, but it's important, and I feel like I'm called to tell you this, that the voice of one crying in the wilderness. Boy, I could go on a tangent there. But move out of the cities, right? And I tell people, move out of the cities, you're going to be trapped in there, you're going to die in there when it comes, when it happens. And people come up with a bazillion excuses why they can't, you don't understand, Pastor Joe, I've got to support a family, my job's here, da-na-na-na-na-na. And I get back to, okay, so your priorities are, in your mind, that you have to support your family. That's a good priority. Anybody who does not provide for his own, especially those of his own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel, right? I get that. It's a biblical precept. Take care of your family. But what does take care of your family mean? To me, take care of your family means get ready to take care of your family against everything, not just today. Today's important, but also tomorrow. Open your eyes, get your priorities straight, pull your head out, have a look around, and go, oh, that's coming, Get ready for it. And so what does provide mean? Provide means food, shelter, adequate medical. What does adequate medical mean? Right? What does adequate food mean? We've got our priorities skewed on what that means. In northern Thailand, in Indonesia, just two places that I've run around a lot out in the countryside, there's people who are living in houses on stilts. Out in like swampy areas. There's people living in cardboard and corrugated tin scrap houses that are happy. They're happy, right? And you say, no, they can't be. They don't have the big game on their big plasma TV. They don't have their new car. They don't have their kids in soccer and dance and dun 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 dun. No, they're happy. They truly are. And the things that you think are important, America, it's what's that word? Chimera. You know, it's just it doesn't even matter. I mean, the things you think are important are crazy. You know, how about, I'll just cut to the chase of this video. You know what our number one priority is? Get right with Him, right? Get right with the Most High Yah. That's the most important thing. If you've got that right, everything else is going to kind of work out in the long term. Maybe short term, you could still be hurting if you don't take care of some more worldly priorities. But you do need to get right with the Most High Yah, with God, right? Yeshua, Jesus said, "No one comes unto the Father but by me." You know, He said, "I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes unto the Father but by me, by Him." That's true. That's true. There's a lot more in there, you know, which I'm not going to sermonize to you. If you want to watch my sermons, go to Shofar Mountain. You know, we have a website there. We have a website, shofarmountain.com. We also have a YouTube channel, Shofar Mountain. We put most of my sermons up there if you want the sermon. But that's your number one priority, getting right with the Most High. But let's just bring it back down to, you know, the vast majority of you all who are out there. The things you think are important are not. You know, you read post-apocalyptic fiction, right? You know you do. And you know that if this event happens, and what is this event going to be? It could be anything. I just talked about that in my last video, and I'm not even going to go there, right? Something's going to happen. If you were already set up out in the country in a little house, you know, now you're in a big house, so now you're in a little house. Maybe you're in a little house with 2 other families, and you have your garden and your goats and your chickens and your well. How much better off are you than living in the apartment that you're living in now in the city, or living in your McMansion that you're not even at 10 hours a day because your wife's off shopping and you're off earning, you know, $220K a year? You know, so you can pay for the kids' soccer and the ballet and the 2 cars, maybe 3, because you got to get your 16-year-old daughter a new car, right? Right? It's the American dream, man. I'm giving it to them all. You're giving them nothing. You're giving them false priorities, false hope, and it's all going to come crashing down. Get your priorities straight. Pull your head out. Have a look around. Your job that pays you all this money is not that important. You can get a job in the country. People in the country, you know what they do? They typically don't have just one stream of income. They do several little things. You know, maybe they have 2 part-time jobs and they sell eggs and they chop wood and they haul scrap, you know, but they get by. They get by, and to the average American out there, you know, the overfed dad. I'm walking around Joko, Johnson County. It's a very affluent area, and you got these fat dads wearing their little, you know, shorts, or, you know, little khaki shorts and their little polo shirt over their prodigious belly, and they have a good haircut, man, and nice glasses, you know, $300 glasses, and they're walking around with their trophy wife and their little kids, and it's like, man, really? Dude, you are going to be lost within 72 hours of stuff happening. And see, I feel like getting my pastor on again. You're also missing the huge clue, and you already are lost on the other part. And again, I'm not trying to turn this channel into my pastor thing, but you better get right with Yah. And you better get right with your priorities in life. Food, water, and shelter are important, but you don't need to have what you think you need to have. Start thinking about it. Start taking some action now, because the things you value now, they're not going to matter soon. All right, I may see you out there.